All systems active. Launch sequence activated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse.
Got my Radegast.
Yeah, dude. Yes. Oh, welcome in to another episode of Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Solus. No introductions necessary from my good friend across the screen, across the pond, Space Tomato. How you doing, brother?
I'm good.
Good.
A couple ponds.
A few. Yeah. It's a little bit more than a throwaway. Yeah, absolutely.
I am good. I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm well. I feel like we haven't talked in like 6 days.
It's been such a long time. Thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. You bet. Always a pleasure. Had a really great conversation. What was it, Sunday of this past weekend? So if you haven't listened to it already and you're listening on podcast or YouTube, go check out the latest episode of Launch Sequence. Yours truly was on Space Tomato's podcast, and it was a phenomenal conversation about 323. I probably got myself in a lot of trouble talking about, predictions. That usually puts me in a hot seat. That's fine. I accept that as my...
That's like the real game of Star Citizen.
Yes. You're
predicting and then getting disappointed.
You're either egregiously wrong or accidentally right. And we'll get into some of that later on in this show. But the segments for today, we're going to be talking about from the community. I've got some poll questions that we asked. That's pretty typical, pretty common in this podcast. And then we'll get into the bulk of the show. And I'm super excited to talk about the convergence. Right? The calm before the storm. I feel like there's a lot of different things happening from different angles, from FPS to flight combat to PvE and PvP gameplay, org play. All of it's happening all at the same time. And I really am looking forward to Space Tomato's reaction to it all. And if we have time, Roadmap Roundup, Wave 2 and the EPTU, Inside Star Citizens, the H2O show, a Galactopedia update, and the Squadron 42 monthly report. Can we do that in an hour? Probably not.
It's a full docket, man. I like it.
It is.
It's dense. But I got to go back. Did you call this a calm before the storm? I feel like it's a storm before a storm.
It depends on what you're currently doing. If you're in the EPTU, it's chaos.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good point, though.
If you're connected in any way into the community, then I'm sure you're feeling some kind of splash damage.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's chaos kind of wherever you look. How you been, man? How you been? How's the family? Let's start with that. We haven't had you on since everything went down over there in Turkey, so you don't have to give a lot of details. Just want to check in with you. How are you? How's the family? How's Honey doing? Yeah, how are we?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can see, we are up and running.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for helping to rally the community behind us there, and thank you to the community really for supporting us and getting backup. But it's been a process. I mean, we're still here in the makeshift room that we're using for doing all of the production. This is all we do. This is our job. This is both me and my wife's full-time job. So this room is everything that we work on right now. We were able to rebuild this computer, which is how I'm running on this chat right now. And overall, we're just still putting time and effort into, trying to push our contractors to get the new place over here finished that we've been waiting on. And, that's that's a process all its own. Moving out of a place is difficult. Moving into a place is difficult. If both of those places are like in equal states of deconstruction, it's just not a good time. And it's now been a couple months. It's looking like it's probably going to be another month. Then we'll see. Yeah. But I am super glad that through all of this, we didn't have to really take a big break from what we were doing. The community has been here the whole time. The podcast never stopped. The org never stopped. Obviously, Star Citizen's development never stopped, though we had to keep up with that. It's been a whirlwind, but it ended up being so much better than we initially thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, let this be a testimony to you, your professionalism, Honey's support, but no one would ever know. I mean, you've still been cranking out the videos like you just mentioned. You look great. The audio visual looks great. Like no one would ever know. So let that be like an affirmation of just how professional and how good you do your craft. So
luckily, I had actually just gotten a new camera right before this all happened, so that the video looks better than it would have anyways. Good. And yeah, Honey, she handles the podcast. She does all the Streamathon stuff, the graphics, the org, the community, and without her doing that as well, like this, it has been a team effort. Yeah, I mean, it always has been, but this was truly, it's a test of how well we can work together. Yeah. Well, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you up and running. Star Citizen's community isn't the same without you, so glad you were able to stay on board, my friend. Thank you. Absolutely. Speaking of community, let's go to From the Community segment, where at the end of every podcast on Spotify, we ask a poll. And so episode 53, we asked, with mission 5 of the Overdrive Initiative being a supply request, what are you bringing to deliver boxes and still protecting yourself? I'll give the answers, and then I would love to hear kind of a different spin on the question for Space Tomato. But we had a bunch of C1s. Maybe because it's brand new, maybe because it's a smaller like supply ship or cargo ship, but a bunch of C1s. Somebody pivoted and said, hindsight, they would have chosen a 400i. I don't really know why you'd go with a 400i. I would love to hear more about that. And then we have, for me, it's difficult to fly in like combat because you have that long nose. So seeing around you, being able to maneuver those crash sites, that for me is personally hard. And then we had one response to the MSR, which I like the MSR. I can't wait until data running comes out, but yeah, I want to spin this question for you. What is your everyday ship? So C1. Oh, it is a C1. I can answer that so easily. Okay. Yeah, it's the C1. Yeah. That's my everyday ship. Yeah, tell me why. And I can easily explain why. Yes. I think it's the same reason a lot of people have. All the conversation in this game is around specialized ships, right? Because they're just cool to talk about. Like, who doesn't want to talk about the Polaris? It's got torpedoes that are big enough for us to camp in for a couple days. But it's all the standard, really basic ships that we are going to be spending all of our time in, because most of the time in Star Citizen, you kind of are just doing multiple things. You're like running missions to have fun, at least now. Maybe in the future, we'll have things we're doing someday. But right now you're like, oh, I'll do a mercenary mission. That's boring. Let's do investigation. Oh, my friend's online. Let's go just drive bikes out in the forest. I don't know what people do these days, but all those things you can do with like a generalized ship. So I think a lot of folks like myself picked up the MSR because not only does it have a cool profession coming later on with data running, it's focused on scanning, and it looked really, really good when it came out. But it also is like a really good general ship. It's got a big hangar bay. You can put vehicles in it, cargo in it. You've got multiple seats, turrets, all this stuff that makes it like just a really good kind of daily driver. Yeah. And then the C1 came along. Yeah. And everybody was like, oh, that's what the MSR was supposed to be. Yeah. So we all jumped to it. And I mean, that's what? Fair. Like Freelancer, Cutlass, C1. Yeah. That size ship, you can't beat that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in a game where you're having, like you're changing between bounty hunter to another game loop, the process of changing out your ship takes 15, 20 minutes, right? At some point. So to your point, it's nice to have an all-arounder. I can't land on what mine is. I am so all over the map. It was originally like the Origin 325 Alpha for the same reasons, because it had a little cargo, it was a little bit of combat, it looked sexy. Yeah. It looked nice, and then I don't know, I got into the Phoenix, but then the Phoenix constellation was too big of a ship and having to manage that crap. So it's just interesting for me. That's one of my favorite questions to ask somebody. It's like, all right, if you're going to spend 45 minutes to an hour in the verse, what do you fly in? And it's usually the C1. It's like that's a very common response.
Yeah, it's new. Crusader's got a really good style too.
It does.
I think for a lot of people that answer is going to change to the Zeus, but I'm thinking that they've really started in the last couple of years I don't think they've started to realize that ship size that they've probably always known, but I'm almost suspicious that they actually tried to hold off longer on these specific ships, because these are the bread and butter, and the longer they wait to make a ship, the better the ship's going to be.
Yes,
that's tinfoil. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but I think it's good they're just now getting to these 2 to 3 person size ships, because those are going to be where we spend a lot of time. Yeah,
absolutely. And the way my mind works, I got to go back to like my days of World of Warcraft and ESO, where you've got solo play, you've got like a dungeon play of like 5 people, and then you've got like a raid, which is 20, 30, an org, right? Yeah. And so I classify ships in that category of like solo play, but what's like my dungeon 5-team element? That would be, to me, would be like a Zeus. It would be a Phoenix, like a 4 to 5 person like manned ship. And then you've got your Idris, your javelins that are going to obviously be your org ships. So I think I'm going to have something for each classification.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Got to figure that piece out, but
I wish that they had given us... Sorry, I got to go back to the C1 real quick.
Yeah, good.
I really feel like a good ship a lot of people would have been an M1. It's like a more... a little bit bulkier. Maybe it's got a turret on it. Could be a remote turret, but like maybe it's got a turret on it besides that rail turret in the back. It's got a little bit heavier armor. Maybe slight upgrade to the guns, but that might be OP.
So you're not happy with the A1 because it's more of a bomber.
Yeah, I mean the A1 is focused on bombing. I'm thinking something that came with like an armory, a couple drop seats, and then focus mainly on like the armor of the ship after that.
Never say never. I feel like that'd be a pretty easy conversion, but what do I know?
Yeah. They can cutlass steel it.
Yeah, right. That's right. So this morning before our podcast, I have a live poll going on right now. I asked, like, for this morning's recording between me and Space Tomato, what would you rather hear about? And current 322 discussion, 0%. No one wants to hear about current build. Upcoming 323, 48%, and then predictions for 2024, 52%. So we're going to put that tinfoil hat back on you. All right?
Oh, boy.
You mentioned Zeus. Are we going to see the Zeus in the Invictus launch week? Are we going to see the Zeus later this year? You mentioned Zeus.
I think we'll see it. I mean, we'll definitely see it later this year.
Okay.
And I know the monthly report, the stuff that they say on there makes things sound nice.
It does.
But
it does.
But it does that often. And specifically with ships, the segment of the monthly report we get to see is ship art. So sometimes they'll be like, yeah, ship's doing well. It's reaching LOD 0. All's good. But it's like, that's just art.
Yeah.
Sometimes if there are gameplay aspects related to it, they might take a little bit longer. I don't think Zeus has any in particular. That's more my approach for the Polaris. But with the Zeus, I don't see it in Invictus.
Yeah.
I just they've planned these sales and like these ships coming out pretty far in advance, and I'm guessing they had it scheduled in CitizenCon when they told us they wanted it to come out. So I'm thinking they probably have it specifically slated for something like an event, promotions, and they've got to have marketing material ready for it. They still got to do like damage passes on it and all this kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say Invictus. Maybe it'll come with like a 4.0 in September if that does happen. Yeah. Maybe it won't wait until CitizenCon, but I don't think we're going to see it in the next month.
Got it. Got it.
month and a half.
I'll limit the hot takes as much as I can. I like leaning that direction. So
I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel the pull.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the second poll. We only have 2 more. So the second poll, coming out of this last episode of Beyond the Verse and Sunday's episode on Launch Sequence, I asked, when do you think 323 will be live in the PU? We had 240 votes. It was received really well, and the breakout is the follows. Late April, 18%. Early May, 28%. Mid-May, 29%. And late May, around Invictus Launch Week, 25%. So it looks like we're right there, like very, very evenly split, but the majority going to mid-May. I know you and I chatted about it on the launch sequence on Sunday. Any updates? You still think we're mid-May, or do you have an opinion on when 323 is hitting?
I will always, except for with 318, so that was a weird one.
It's a curse word.
And 4.0. 318 and 4.0 are tech limited. Every other update they do is time limited. And I'll stand by what I said before. They're going to drop features in order to get this patch out in time to have an Invictus update afterward. So early May at the latest, in my opinion.
Oh, nice. Okay.
First 2 weeks of May, I think, will be live. So I guess that kind of counts as early mid-May. But I think they're still shooting. I think they're shooting for open PTU maybe in April.
Yeah.
But they just don't have. They cannot risk Invictus Week. They can't drop a big patch before Invictus Week, and they also can't not release 323 before Invictus Week. Both of those reasons being because hype.
Yep.
You drop a big patch. You have bugs. You have problems. That ship sale doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You don't drop the patch, and again, there's no hype because the features didn't come out. So
yeah. Well, your response hints at the bulk of this podcast, like the convergence of everything you just mentioned. All the hype, all the different, 323s and Invictus Launch Week and what it all means. That's going to be very interesting to dive more into here in a little bit. The last question has nothing to do with Star Citizen, but it's game related, and I want to hear your voice here. Who did it better? Fallout on Prime, The Last of Us, or Halo?
Why did you have to put Halo in? That's mean.
Dude. I wanted to get a little bit of sentiment out there.
Literally, I'm like sitting in my head. As soon as I heard Fallout, I was like, "Oh, don't say Halo. Don't say."
Well, I did it.
Could have said Arcane.
I did it for you.
Another good show.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I did it for you.
I'm a big. I got Halo on my arm.
Yes,
I'm a huge freaking fan. And I still have not been able to bring myself to watch the whole first season. I actually wanted to wait until the second season was out because I was excited about Reach. I'm sorry. I'm going to get on my soapbox about that show. Yeah. Who did it best?
So
I actually haven't seen Fallout yet.
So the results, and then I'll let you in on a little bit of Fallout.
Sorry.
No, you're. It's just I put Halo in there for a reason. So The Last of Us.
Going,
I know. The Last of Us, 22%. Halo, 6%. And Fallout was 65%. And then for others, for people to put in comments, about 6.5%. So Fallout destroyed, and it might be because it's like the latest one that's out, and everybody's all hyped about it. But in the other comments, we saw things like smaller game implementations. We had like a Final Fantasy. Evidently, there was a cartoon or an animated. I'm so sorry, just to fit it.
Spirit Within.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we had some animated versions of Final Fantasy, but yeah, Fallout's killing it. If you're a fan of Fallout, if you've played Fallout, this is a show to watch. They did it so perfectly. Details, the music. People are saying like Easter eggs. It's not Easter eggs. They just paid attention to the damn game. Like there's bobbleheads, and all these implications. But it's a really,
did you see the vaults? Show. Huge Easter egg, man.
You
almost miss it if you don't pay attention.
I can't believe they mentioned them. It's crazy. But no, it's I always like throwing in a random question in there or poll in there to get that different conversation going. But Fallout's phenomenal. Halo, I've only heard bad things about it, man. Like I heard like the producers didn't really watch it, don't really care about it, so it didn't translate well.
I don't know what's real and what's not with what caused the show to be the way it is. Yeah. And I'm not even speaking from firsthand experience. I'm not giving a professional review of that it's bad because I haven't watched it all the way through. But I just from what I've gotten from reviews and synopsis of the story and everything, I'm just flabbergasted. I'm absolutely freaking, I'm baffled. I'm bottled. I don't know what else to call it, but I don't understand how there was so much existing lore for Halo that they didn't go with. And I'm not trying to be the whole, stick with the don't expand the universe kind of thing. I like when they expand on it. Yeah. But getting it kicked off, like starting out the show, why not start with something that's a little bit more familiar? Why didn't they start the first season with Fall of Reach? I don't. That it shows that they knew they needed to do that in the second season. So I don't know what they were thinking there. But I'm done with that. Yep. I haven't seen Fallout. I want to watch it. Last of Us was great though, so I'll vote for that.
There you go. There you go. All right, I'll bring us back into Star Citizen. I was trying to rib you a little bit. So here we go. All right, our main segment for today, and we've been alluding to it for the last, have we been doing this already for 30 minutes? Goodness. So we've already
Halo discussion.
Yeah, right. We burned a lot talking about Halo, but yeah. So right now, the episode I'm calling it is "Calm Before the Storm," and we joked around about the word "calm," but it seems like we're looking down a pipeline of a convergence of all different types of gameplay, whether it's org play, PvE, PvP. We got 323 debate with master modes and everything else, all happening in the next 6 weeks, if we're going to be safe. Let's say 6 weeks. And I guess my question for you, just to start off the conversation, is you've been back in this game significantly longer than I have. Has there ever been a more kind of chaotic time in Star Citizen? I mean that in a good way, but the convergence of so many different aspects of the game all happening at the same time.
Not so much chaos, but I think general like excitement and kind of almost suspense in the community. Yeah. Pre 3.0, which is, interesting because we're pre 4.0. I actually I'm working on a video talking about the parallelism.
Sounds good.
I don't know.
Let's go with it.
The parallel nature of the lead up to these two major patches, because they're actually pretty similar all the way down to like right before 3.0 happened, they dropped a flight model that was very similar to what we're getting with master modes now. So everything feels just a little bit like that lead up to 3.0. And it is monumental for sure. I mean, even the time before 3.18 wasn't like this, because the things that were coming in, there wasn't that much coming into the game. That was about PES. But now, like you said, server meshing on the horizon. But at the same time, flight model's changing. Yeah. The way we interact with the game is changing. The UI is all changing. Combat's changing. Like the rendering system, everything is kind of meeting at the same time, like you said.
Yeah. Is now a good time for people to come back to Star Citizen, or would you recommend them waiting until, I don't know, June? June? Like
depends on what you're coming back from.
It's fair. Yeah.
If you're one of the people who left like 3 years ago and you're like, I am waiting for this game to become something I can actually play. No, this isn't the time to come back, because it's getting a huge upgrade, but it's not changing the fundamental issues the game had 3 years ago. Still, it's mainly content.
Yeah.
But if you left maybe last year or 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, even maybe if you last year, just because you didn't like the controls of the map or something, like you just were waiting for another good patch rather than a fundamental shift in the game, then I think 323 is the branch, at least, is a good time to come back. Maybe even Invictus Week time.
Yeah. I've got a lot of friends who left during 318, which that is what it is. We already talked about that in nausea at this point. But they're waiting for something more stable to come back to. You've got people that wanted things to do, like the famous air quotation marks that we do when we talk about Star Citizen, but things to do in the verse. They're waiting for more activities, which I believe Overdrive and XenoThreat is kind of starting to chip away at and giving us a reason to get into the game. I'm in agreement with you, though. I think postponing, like maybe coming back right in Invictus Launch Week when it's very aesthetic and sexy and they've got all the ships and the expo, like maybe that would be a good time to really get into it. That's a big maybe, though. Like, that's an all caps maybe.
Because Invictus Launch Week also can be pretty painful to play through. Like, they'll do a free fly event. There'll be a bunch of people coming back. It can be kind of rough. So it's also like, if you already know Invictus Launch Week, maybe wait until 3.23.2. You know, then you're gonna get like your inventory changes. You're getting your persistent hanger, and well, this is all assumed. We don't actually know, but like, I think June-ish time would be a really good time to come back.
There you go. So you heard it from Space Tomato. Don't play this game until June. All right.
No sales. No. What did they hashtag? No money till June. I don't know. Like, sometimes
I'm not pledging another dollar.
Do their whole pledge thing. I'm not gonna pay any more money till you give me data hauling.
When they've already spent concierge level pay on the game, and they're like, I'm not going to spend another dollar. You've done your job, I promise.
I encourage people not to spend money. Like, don't do it. It's just going to make you more mad if it doesn't go the way you want it to.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going into the next 6 weeks. So right now, Overdrive Initiative has kicked off. We're in 5 phases of it. There is an announcement that came out this last Saturday. Jake Bradley came on. Spectrum announces that there's an extension to Phase 5 because of issues, and there are many issues with Phase 5. Just really quick synopsis. You're flying into a derelict site, a crashed caterpillar. You've got to take out maybe 4 or 5 enemy, aerial combat wise. You land, and then you've got to get 3 boxes onto a ship. And the moment I say boxes, everybody should clue in that it's broken. Box missions in Star Citizen are broken, just period. But you've got to go to this derelict site. You have to find 3 boxes of supplies, and you have to take them to the Pyro jump point, the Stanton Pyro jump point, which is awesome. It brings you to a brand new location or a newish location to turn them in, and that's great. It sounds amazing. But finding the boxes, getting the boxes to stay on your ship and not clip through and fall in your quantum travel, getting them to count when you turn them into the kiosk, it's all buggy. So quickly, my experience, it took me about 2.5 hours to do this very simple, very simple mission, and I still didn't succeed. I was going to say that. Yeah, usually I just fail out. Yeah, I tried putting in the last box, didn't count. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. And then the very next day, I hate to admit this, and my org is listening, I know they are, I cheesed it. I asked in general chat, hey, who's currently doing Phase 5? And I got invited to a party, and they were literally turning in the mission when I got invited, and I got credit for it. So I don't really know what it's like to finish Phase 5. So yeah. So there's a little bit of news, a little bit of update.
The doing anything that depends on box missions was a bad idea. Especially because they're just about to change that system over. I know they probably wanted to include it, but just wait until the next run. No, I get why they're doing it. I think it's a very brilliant idea of getting us more excited about the Pyro jump point, about how and why we're staffing up and equipping the Pyro jump point. It's teasing it to 4.0. Like, it's great. I love the idea of it, but you hit the nail on the head. It's a broken loop, and you're pushing an entire community towards a broken aspect of the game. So they're extending it. They're trying to fix it. Yeah, well, that's why not do something a little bit, maybe something different. Maybe you have to go and upload something. Commodity trading, yeah. Like, what was it, Invictus Week 2 years ago, I think, when we had to transport like fireworks and stuff? Why didn't we just do that?
Yeah, that's a great,
I don't know.
That's a great question.
Interesting.
Elliot Maltby, you are always welcome on this podcast to explain.
Get him on.
So what are your thoughts on XenoThreat up to this point? New name, Overdrive Initiative. The last time this ran was about 12 or 13 months ago last year. Don't know if you played it last year. Don't know if you're playing it this year. But what are your general thoughts of what's currently in this build?
Okay, so is it confirmed then that this is kind of taking over what XenoThreat is? It's not it will never run as the single phase kind of thing again.
It will never run as a single phase again, but stage 6, which is obviously the next iteration, will be reminiscent. A lot of familiarities with last year's. So you'll have Idris's comm, and you'll have a space aerial, combat. And they're hinting at boarding an Idris. Like there was that video Inside Star Citizen where they hinted at getting onto the Idris and doing things on the Idris. So it'll feel familiar, but they're never going back to the singular, like XenoThreat.
That's actually interesting.
Inside Star Citizen.
That's interesting because I do hope that they're not going to change all of their. I think we should have both types of events, right? Like the single shot long-term one, and then the ones that they can run over and over as like one quick kind of mission that's global. So I hope they're not doing that with all of them. But I don't run XenoThreat very much up until, even this computer, I couldn't run the game that great. Like I got a good graphics card last year that did okay, but my processor was still really holding me back. So when I played the game, I kind of never took it too seriously because I was also usually streaming and talking with people. XenoThreat was always my favorite because it combined ship combat, ground combat, cargo hauling, and a little bit of like logistics gameplay. Yeah, absolutely. Most well-rounded in my opinion. So the fact that they've not only expanded the things that you're doing in that event to like bounty hunting and a group open event and diversify the action, they've also expanded it to multiple weeks, so it feels like there's more of a lead up. Yeah. And it also means that it's a one-shot run. It's more realistic that it's happening, and everybody can still take part in it. But I think it's really missing lore and narration. Okay. It's just horribly painful to see all of the lore that's kind of just it's just floating out there. It's not getting directed towards the players. Nobody knows why they're doing these things.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and then it could, I think, feel a lot more cohesive in terms of the different phases. Yeah. But I haven't, just like with XenoThreat, I haven't gotten to pay a ton of attention to all these different phases. I've played them once or twice, and while they're fun, they're not the gameplay I'm interested in, so passed them up for the most part.
Yeah, you bring up a very interesting point. You have Siege of Orison, where you've got the character will come on your HUD and have like a voice acting, will tell you kind of what's happening. Jumptown also has like the audio, the narration, like here's what's happening, and depending on which mission you accept. Super interesting that XenoThreat doesn't. And I wonder if that was just a time restraint or...
XenoThreat itself has actually had a decent amount of stuff tied in. I just think the game overall still kind of lacks it, in terms of meeting characters out in the open that will talk to you, or picking up a data pad that tells a story, or those kinds of things that help do the world building that kind of let you understand that you're fighting one of the worst terrorist organizations in human. Like we're fighting these people that want to straight up make other species extinct, and they have military class quantum driven capital ship spaceships. Like this should be pretty intense what we're doing, and it just kind of just feels like we're just sort of jogging out there.
If you have time,
XenoThreat, can you get out of here?
Yeah, we don't appreciate you.
Yeah, so the event's good, and then there's a little bit of lore there, but I think the narration could really get picked up for these things, especially so long term.
No, that's a great point. So, I'm trying to think back, like where is the story? And maybe for XenoThreat, like stage 6, we'll get more into what we saw last year. But the Overdrive Initiative, these first 5 phases, you're right. There's no, other than reading your contract manager, there's not really any immersion. But what I will say though is what they've done to group play using the Overdrive Initiative, phase 1 in particular, like requiring you to be at least in a team of 3. I think that has done Star Citizen a great service. For me and my org, it has increased our org play. Right, we're coming together on org nights and we're going out to the comm array station so we can disable and uploads, and then we got to hold down security post Korea, and like it takes more than just yourself or maybe 1-2 other people. You've got to have 5-10 people, which brings me to my second question that this will be snipped and it'll be put on TikTok, so careful with your answer.
Hi, TikTok.
Matchmaking. Okay, let me give you some context first. New World. When we released New World, we did not have matchmaking. It was go and do dungeons as long as you can find 5 people, and like it caused a lot of chaos. It was gating. It gated people from being able to progress because they weren't able to bring 5 friends. They wished that there was matchmaking. Now there's matchmaking in New World. Along the same spirit, I'm curious what your thoughts are for org play and matchmaking in Star Citizen. Is it inevitable? Do you want matchmaking in Star Citizen where, hey, I want to go do XenoThreat, so I'm going to sign myself up, and once a group of 10, gets formed, we'll go? Or should it remain org play external to the game only?
I think, and apologies that you could probably hear the call to prayer in the background.
You're fine. You're fine.
I think that matchmaking has to happen, but there are some interesting ways they could do it. One of the coolest ways they could do it, I think, is like what you said, just like signups. Yeah. So if there's an event going on in the system, maybe that system, the local stations around that event have signups. And if you go physically to that location, or it could be on the mobiGlas, but I think physical location-based stuff helps to get player base spread out. Go to that location, you get yourself in that little sign-up list, and then once other people sign up into your group, it notifies you eventually, and you all have to meet a location and get going on your own. Puts you into a comms channel, VoIP actually works, and you get to play the game in a little group, all based on like the reputation of those players. Do your reputations line up with the factions involved with this mission? Do they line up with each other? Are you known as good players? I think it could be pretty straightforward because they have already talked about all these systems they want to do. But matchmaking automatically, so like if you showed up at a location like a UGF and you entered into that location and it like instanced that UGF so everybody could do that same thing at the same time and it automatically match made you with other people, I'm not super excited for that. I think mainly because it implies the instancing, but I believe that's something that they're really starting to talk more about in terms of like points of interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have much to say about automatic matchmaking, but I do hope that there's a way for people to sign up optionally to join in these events with other people.
Yeah, that question was not in our show notes, so I totally blindsided you with that question. But it's one that's like, it's super interesting because not everybody is in the garden. Not everybody is in sole provision, right? Like either you have to find an org that has 150, or more people in it, or you ask general chat and that's a hit or miss. So there's got to be something.
Can't depend on general chat, but I do think that reputation will be really important for how that works.
I like that. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, we're going to wrap up this convergence conversation because we're 47 minutes into the podcast.
Hey, no rush.
Yeah,
it's good talks.
It is. I know. I love talking to you. Chaos at work. So get into that at a different day. So the last piece of what's converging is Invictus Launch Week, and I did ask earlier in the week. I kind of teased it. I put a post on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it nowadays, looking at the last 3 years of Invictus Launch Week, knowing that it rotates. And so, 3 years ago, it was, I'm not going to try to remember, but it was Microtech, Area 18, and Crusader, right? So that would leave me to assume that Hurston's on the docket, even though they don't really have a conference center or convention center. They do and they don't. They do, but they've only used it once in its entire history of existence. So I guess my question for you, just if you have an opinion at all, where is Invictus Launch Week taking place this year?
Maybe they'll just put us out on the wasteland in Hurston. Be like, this is good enough, right? You're good. Just put the plastic bag on your head.
Just at the prison. It'll be great.
Yeah. I don't know where they'll put it. I think it feels like they have way more on their plate, and I don't think that. Well, they're talking about in the monthly reports. You've seen the talk about decoration for these new expo centers. The locations team is working on the place, so they're obviously updating something. But I do think they're going to use a past location because they've just got other more important things to work on right now. It's important for the ship sale, but I think a new location isn't really important to make the sale a success.
Yeah. If that is the case, then I will make the prediction it's back at Area 18 this year because it's close to the Pyrostate and Jump Point. It'll be close to, XenoThreat and everything that's going to be going down. So it would make sense that they would repeat last year and it'd be at Area 18 again. So,
yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, let's go through what we can in the next couple of minutes. So this might be hot and heavy, maybe a lightning round. But on Wednesday, we had a roadmap roundup where Space Tomato, I was accidentally right on your podcast. I had a Freudian slip. I said that the personal and instant hangers were going to be delayed until 323.x, and I was very quickly corrected. No, it was just the item. It was the item banks. And you were right at that moment, but it wasn't, 2 days later that they're like, hey guys, we were listening to the launch sequence and we're going to go ahead and push back. Personal instance hangers, cargo hauling, the item banks, and freight elevators are all being pushed back to 323.x, meaning it's coming, it's just not going to be in the initial release. Yeah. What are your reactions, my friend? Besides me being amazing at predicting.
Huh? It's pure disappointment because it is such a crucial, we've been, the cargo hauling, the cargo refactor, is one of the biggest changes in Star. I think it's the biggest change in Star Citizen ever. Planetary tech was big.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say cargo hauling is bigger than planetary tech, but it's literally changing everything we've known about the game in terms of how you can retrieve your stuff. All this time, we've been able to just get the stuff where we need it. And then they slowly started to change it back. They introduced the inventory. Then they made it so you couldn't get stuff from the space station while you were at the city. Yeah. And then they made it so you couldn't get anything anywhere when you were anywhere unless you were at that place. And now they're like, hey, you got to walk across your hangar. This is something that players have wanted for so long. Since the first days of the Kickstarter, this is one of the big things that was like, oh, you're playing a space game where everything around you is physicalized. That's crazy. So there's a ton of hype behind this. And myself included, I think we were all very, very bummed that it happened, but I think kind of expectant. Like you said, you said it on the podcast. I had a cargo hauling video that I straight up released to supporters a week ago that I was going to release, I think probably Monday or Sunday, or no, I was planning on releasing it, I think last Friday. And just kind of was like, I'll wait.
Doesn't feel right.
We got a roadmap roundup coming up. This is going to be the one where it happens or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I waited and it didn't happen. It took a couple days and reworked the video and just released it. But we kind of knew it was coming.
No.
And the bummer is that it's the one really PU focused thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides reputation.
Yeah, no, it was a quick kick in the just right in the crotch, just everything that we were excited about. Yeah,
the space crotch.
Yeah, right in the space crotch. I don't want to take away from what we are still getting. We're still getting an amazing UI uplift. The EVA alone is worth it. Yes, but I think both can be true. I think both can be true at the same time. It sucks to not get what I think most of us have been crying for in the last year and a half, 2 years. But at the same time being excited, okay, well, I'm still satisfied that it's not going to look the same. It's going to feel different. It's just the star map and, all the different things that we talked about on the launch sequence. But yeah, this one was tough. I was glad I was wrong on Sunday. And then when I was proven right, I'm like, damn it, sometimes it's not fun to accidentally be right. So yeah, that's a bummer.
It's too bad. I'm hoping that that's a 323.2 kind of thing in June.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it doesn't. You know what I hope is that this is something that, because they were pretty confident it was coming in. Yeah, they thought it was going to be something we used in XenoThreat.
Yeah.
They were almost for sure on this. So I can't imagine it's that far away.
Yeah.
Maybe something catastrophic has gone wrong with it, but I feel like it's just something that maybe needed a few more weeks and it's a time-based update. They cannot push a few more weeks because it's got to be a few weeks before the sale.
Sure.
So I'm very hopeful that it's a June release still, and they just needed a month, maybe a month and a half to polish it off. But I do expect it to come into the game solid.
Yeah, I hope so because that's gonna be amazing when it does come. Another thing that we talked about on the launch sequence was our feelings on Wave 1 of patch 3.23, whatever. And it was like stability was horrendous. I don't know how much really you and I got to play it because it was so bad. Have you been able to play Wave 2 yet? Have you been able to get in since last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday?
Yeah, it came out 2 days ago. When I say last
2 days
Wednesday,
ago,
like 2 days ago, Wednesday. Yeah.
I played 2 days ago.
Okay.
Did I play yesterday? I don't think I've been doing a little bit of getting footage I think I'm pretty sure I was just playing on Wednesday.
Okay.
But it felt okay when I was playing.
Smooth. It is smooth. And it might be different at the time of recording this podcast, but playing it Wednesday and Thursday, so much better. I actually got to get into EVA. I actually got to do the engineering loop. So I felt grossly underprepared for our launch sequence conversation, but Wednesday happened. I'm like, oh man, this is what it's supposed to have felt like.
Any new updated takes?
Not overall sentiment, but I got to do combat. I got to look at the loot process. So like FPS was solid. It was a lot better than what I got to experience with Wave 1. So not really a new take, just okay, it's an affirmation, right? It validates what I was
cool. Yeah.
Under the impression of. EVA is better than I thought it was. EVA even better than I thought it was. It's smooth, it's beautiful. But my frames per second, I was like 30 frames per second. You don't get that in EPT. Like that doesn't exist. Your PowerPoint presenting.
I've been enjoying higher frames per second. I think it's my computer, but I do hope that it has something to do with the patch a little bit. A little bit.
I hope so. I hope so as well. But if you haven't, so listeners, viewers, if you haven't given Wave 2 a try, actually do it. It's somewhat stable, and you can actually really get into some of the test work or the experimental test work. All right, yesterday, we had Inside Star Citizen, the H2O show. I know you haven't seen it yet, Tomato. I'll give you my reactions, not to spoil anything, and then a general question for you. But
get some light spoilers. That's okay.
Stunning. The water work is stunning, and not just graphically or aesthetically. Like, of course, you'd expect that from Star Citizen. They do really well rendering, but the water, beautiful, whatever. But the physics of it, like watching a ship vertically take off above the water and seeing what you would expect from the water reacting to it. The way the water crashes against the side or the hull of a ship or the side of a rock, the reflection of the water against the bottom of the 890 jump, it looks like something you would see like in real life.
So
go ahead.
Does it look better than what we have in the PTU?
Yes.
It just hasn't reached that
level
yet.
No, it hasn't reached that level yet. So at least my experience, the ePTU water, it looks great. Upgrades, like you have a little bit of the foam, but in the Inside Star Citizen video, you start seeing a lot of the reflections, a lot of the underwater. Not to spoil anything, but the underwater like ray tracing, what that looks like in like how it affects your HUD. Like these are like some pretty crazy things that you're going to see on Inside Star Citizen. Okay. But
cool.
Yeah, and so my question for you, it's listeners of Beyond the Verse know I have thalassophobia, which is funny because on the SF team I was a dive team leader, so I had to get over that fear pretty quickly. But thalassophobia, I hope there's no missions underwater, because if there are, I'm not doing them. It's terrifying. It's a thought. It's a terrifying thought for me to be flying out in space, getting into a planet that is 100% ocean, and flying into the ocean to do a mission underwater. I won't be able to do it. So my question for you, with no data, no precedent, no anything, are we having missions underwater? Are we doing, like, how far are we going? Is it just pretty? Is it just something that we want to look at and be like, okay, that's great? Or do you think Star Citizen has higher aspirations for water?
I think it's been definitely a player desire But I also want to say that they've said that it's not out of the question. Obviously, they're not like, yeah, you're going to build underwater bases and stuff. I mean, maybe 2016, 2015 CIG would have said that. But
sure.
I don't think they have seriously, like they have, you know how they kind of say things are like, oh, yeah, that might, we might come around to that. And you're
never
like,
say never.
Probably not going to have time for it. Yeah. I think it's certainly in the realm of possibility. They've talked about making sure we had proper underwater physics. And it's like, why would we need that if we're not going underwater? So maybe not necessarily missions underwater, but like loot drops and stuff, like the barest of underwater stuff, like what you would do in Assassin's Creed maybe. But I'm right there with you. Underwater stuff freaks me out. It's dating all the way back to meeting that gigantic eel in Mario 64. And every game since.
Yeah.
Messes me up.
So you did not play Subnautica, I'm assuming?
No, I've looked at it, which I thought was pretty brave, but I haven't played it yet.
Nope. I am man enough to admit that is not a game I'll touch. But if Star Citizen starts going that direction where there is some Subnautica components, count me out. I'm gonna have to bow out of that one.
I've got to get over it. I'm working on it. My wife loves the sea. She's grown up around it, and it's always been a part of her life. So I'm learning to live with it a little bit more. And like I get in water. I enjoy water. It's more you're in the ocean, and it's kind of, you can't really see anything around you, but you can see like dark shapes in the distance, maybe because of like the seaweed or the algae or the rocks. But is that a rock? Dude, are you sure?
It's crazy, man. So on the dive team, we have what's called a dive board. And so, you know, you're doing night operations, you can't see anything around you, but you're fixated on this dive board that has these small little infrared lights. And so you're following this dive board. As long as you just focus on the dive board and not like looking around at pitch blackness, like you're fine. That's how we got over it. Hold on, we're losing you on Discord. So like there's ways to get around it, but like even yesterday, I'm flying to the Pyro State and Jump Point, and there's a new location. This is live in the EPTU. There's a new location called the Wreck Site. There's a new site called the Wreck Site, and it completely takes you away from that experience, or actually I put you into that experience. There's a massive like holdout asteroid. It's pure blackness. You've got the electrical lightning or whatever the hell is happening in space around the jump point. But it put me in that thalassophobia mindset. So I don't know. They have a tendency to do it to me in space as well, for what that's worth. So this game's insane. Space can,
I think they have a lot of potential for horror aspects in this game that they have not tapped almost at all. This game could be like, they could do derelict ships, derelict space stations, aliens, weird noises. There's a lot of stuff you could do in space to scare people.
Yep. Can't wait. Actually, I can wait, and I hope that doesn't hope it doesn't happen. So listen, CIG. Quickly to wrap this up, Galactopedia update on Tuesday. There's a lot to read. I'm not going to get into really any of it. Just wanted to say that it's there. But since we have Space Tomato on, how important is lore to you in games? And I know we kind of touched on it when we talked about Halo. I know maybe the last time we spoke here on Beyond the Verse, we kind of mentioned it. We kind of discussed a little bit about lore. But like, how important is lore driving you to Star Citizen? How important is the lore coming out of Squadron 42? What does it mean to you and what you're currently doing?
Well, I guess I kind of outed myself with the whole Halo talk earlier and the talk about XenoThreat, but I'm definitely a sucker for good lore.
Yeah.
Because a game is a game. I mean, gameplay is important. Don't get me wrong. Like, gameplay is the most important part of a game. Graphics also are important. I'm a sucker for graphics, but like lore really sells it for me. You know, having a reason, living a story is what I play games for. I've always stuck with RPGs for the most part because I just enjoy the idea of guiding a story and seeing how it can be affected by things that obviously I'm not going to do in real life.
Yeah.
So yeah, Halo, for instance, was something that was very heavily driven by lore for me. I read the books. I was very into understanding like the whole conflict in the game, and that conflict is the backdrop for so many of the other things that happen in those games and those movies, and knowing that kind of stuff builds the interest. Like you were talking about earlier, people love the Fallout show.
Yeah.
That's lore.
Yeah.
Like that's you're getting lore for the Fallout games in that way, and getting to learn more about the world that those games live in and the stories that can play out. And now maybe those stories will occur in the game, and you'll know about it because you actually got into the lore.
Yeah, it's funny. My son, I have an 8-year-old son. He's in Pokemon right now, and that dude, he taps A through everything. He doesn't care about reading the story. He just wants to capture Pokemon, right? And I'll ask him, and I never was that kid. Never was that kid. But I asked him, like, hey buddy, what gym are you currently doing? He's like, Dad, I'm on the grass gym. Great. So, like, what about this part of the story? Have you faced off with Gary and all those other questions that I have for him? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. I'm like, what? How do you know? You're missing everything. You're missing 25 years worth of gaming by not reading and like watching. And so when these Galactopedias, come out, I know it's subject to change. I know it's not like written in canon and like it's permanently there. But it makes me want to go to the locations. It makes me want to go do my tours or go to planets I haven't been to in a long time, just to see different parts of the game. And then you hit the nail on the head earlier. I love Overdrive Initiative. I love XenoThreat. But like at the end of the day, why are we doing it? Well, we know why we're doing it, because they're a horrible terrorist organization and they're causing, hell. But the general or maybe average gamer is like, okay, a mission came across my screen. I'm going to go execute, and now I'm going to go back to bounty hunting. I'm going to go back to doing whatever game loop I like. There's just a quality aspect to the game that I think you're missing out on if you don't have lore or if you don't dive into the lore.
Yeah.
So.
And there's some gameplay hints hidden in there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my favorite missions to do solo is like it's when you have to go to like one of those orbital stations, the derelict orbital stations or comma rays, where you have to fly in, you have to read the computer screen, or you have to read a dossier that's like on the ground.
Yeah.
It's also creepy as shit, man. It's creepy because you'll listen to an audio file of like a bunch of people dying essentially, and you're there inside of the location where they all died. It's just, it has the chance of being something extremely amazing. So
it really does. Yeah. I hope the narrative team's gotten more involved lately, and I really do hope we start to see some proper voice acted missions and things that compare to what you're saying. The mission you're talking about, it's like 6 years old.
Yeah.
7 years old now, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely an older one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need some updates on that front.
We do. And the last piece of news before we wrap up, we did have the Squadron 42 monthly report. I did the due diligence of reading it, but I will announce these things are getting short. They're getting super short. So the Star Citizen monthly report that takes me 15 minutes to read on a podcast and like react to, this would probably take you 2 or 3 minutes to read through. So I'm curious, do we read into that, Space Tomato? Are we reading into that thinking, okay, are we almost done polishing, or what does it mean that there's only 5 sections and it takes like 2 or 3 minutes to read? What are your thoughts there?
I think that they're it matches up, right, with the fact that they're not really doing too many gameplay related changes anymore. A lot of the stuff they're doing is like, oh, we're improving this specific scene in this specific chapter. They're touching. They're doing the touch-ups, the last little drops of paint. I don't know if it means they're 2 weeks away from going gold or something like that, or 2 months away, but it certainly, I think, lines up with a lot of the other things that they're doing that mean a game is coming soon.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're getting short, and they're talking a lot about things like mocap and re-recording lines and making sure that the right lighting is working in the right place. And you're like, okay, so looking at the Star Citizen monthly report, you're still doing a lot of stuff. Looking at Squadron, you're tightening the bolts.
Yeah, it feels. I don't know. I'm standing by, and I get to be the one that asks you the hot take because it's my podcast. Damn it! I'm standing by the theme of CitizenCon being Squadron 42. I am changing my prediction, and I made this announcement on your Launch Sequence podcast. I'm changing. I don't think the game's releasing this year, as I made my prediction earlier, but I think it'll be the theme of CitizenCon, and I do think it'll be 2025 when Squadron 42 comes out, just because of everything that we just mentioned. I can't imagine it taking more than another year. So, ball's in your court, man. Put on your tinfoil hat. It's time to take the hot take. When is Squadron 42 coming?
I think we could see a release. I want to say first half of next year.
Okay.
I feel like first quarter could be a thing. But I think we're looking at first half just to be safe. Yeah. Which is kind of where I landed when they first did the whole we're in polishing announcement. I was thinking 2025, like early 2025 seemed most likely. I feel like they would want to aim for the fall, but at the same time, maybe not. Maybe having CitizenCon and the release of your major games so close together isn't the best idea.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Alpha testing? Any play testing of Squadron 42? Or do you think they'll just go straight to release?
I don't think outside of Q&A. I think everything will be internal to the company for that, because they have always been all this time they're like, oh, we don't want to give away spoilers. That'd be crazy if they then just drop the game into a beta and we're like, okay, go ahead and try it. Maybe they'll have like a playable demo of like a 20-minute segment, 30-minute segment or something.
Interesting.
But I don't know. Sorry?
At CitizenCon, or do you think after CitizenCon?
If they were going to do it, they'd probably do it at CitizenCon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like they did with Pyro.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I hope that they give us another run through of the vertical slice they did. I think I said that on the Launch Sequence, actually.
You did, yeah.
I really hope they give us another run through of that. It looks so cool.
Yeah. Dude, it'd be amazing because they have made so many updates since that.
Yeah.
So I think I asked you this maybe on the I think we were off the podcast at that time, but are you going to CitizenCon? Will we see you there?
We're hoping to.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I won't be. I'll be watching virtually. So if I see you, I'll do one of the virtual waves.
Yes. And I will be screaming and saying, hello. Hey, Solus. I know you're on the camera.
That's right. Well, hey, man, as always, blessings to have you here on Beyond the Verse podcast, dude. It means a lot to me. Great friend of ours, Space Tomato. I have to do this. I feel professionally obligated to do this, but I'm pretty damn sure everybody listening already listens to you, already watches you, but let's plug it. How can people get more of Space Tomato?
More Space Tomato. Oh, boy. We have a few YouTube channels. Space Tomato and Space Tomato 2 have been around for a while. Space Tomato 2 is where the podcasts go, deep dive, more in-depth analysis of Star Citizen and hopefully other games at some point goes. I just started another channel, Space Tomato Plays, for gameplay stuff, because now I can play the game. And I've been wanting to... The longest time, the main content I've wanted to make is like the cinematic gameplay stuff you'd see from DayZ. And I'm happy to finally get started on that. So we started a channel to post that. We've got a personal channel where we actually posted an update about the whole GoFundMe and everything that happened. You're featuring in there. And also I'm streaming on Twitch and YouTube. That's mainly it. We've got a Discord community. The garden is great. We've got a Star Citizen org inside that, which is also great to join if you'd like. And yeah. Do it. It's a great people. So thanks again. If you want more Beyond the Verse podcast and you're listening for the first time, join our socials /Beyond the Verse or /BTV_cast. Email us at contact@beyondtheversehq.com and be part of the conversation. We'll read through in our From the Community segments every single show. And
And then respond to our Spotify Q&A. We do a poll and Q&A at the end of every single show. So at the end of this one, we'll ask some questions and you can be part of next week's episode as well. But I hope this finds everybody well. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Safe travels as you traverse beyond the verse. Take care, everybody.